Bayside Folsom, today is a day that will change the history of our church. Today is a history book moment in our church, a church that launched 15 years ago with a couple people in the living room. About 23 people in one living room has grown to a thriving community of Jesus followers with multiple thousands of people that God has really blessed and touched this community to be what it is today. What I've said in this whole Next initiative, that NXT, is that right now we stand on the X. No doubt in my mind that we stand at the intersection of what is in now and T tomorrow. I said in the very first sermon of this initiative on February 1st that as a kid I always conceptualized X by X marks the spot. Where if we stopped for a second, if we found the X, that we could pause for a second because right there was where the magic was going to be. That an X is two lines, each an entity of its own, but now intersecting. That we're at a crossroads of sort, a collision point of sorts. One that shouts to those who can see it, it's time to stop moving, and it's time to start digging. That right here in the moment, in the season, in the place that we are, the treasure is here, just beyond the things that we can see, waiting to be discovered on the other side of obedience. That today is Commitment Sunday in our initiative. If you are new here, this is not normal. We do not normally parade 90 kids up front who all bring quarters. This is not some weird kumbaya, cross-leg humming cult. Like, we're not any of that. What we are in the middle of is a building that's too small and we got to get out of here. So that's what we're in the middle of right now. If you are new today, welcome to a family conversation, and know that nothing is expected of you in this. For those of us that call this church home, however, we have been building for 7 weeks to this moment. Now, there are some people that aren't here today, and they'll get the opportunity to commit in weeks to come. And it's not like if you miss the 15th, it's all over. It's not. But today is the day everything has been leading towards, where a group of people come together to secure the future, where a group of people in one generation say, we're willing to sacrifice so that the next generation is blessed. So that the next generation has a home, so the next generation, there is place carved out in our community and in our world for those to seek and find God, though He is not far from any one of them. We've said that this vision, this whole initiative won't happen without a few things. We've said it's not without vision, not without unity, not without stewardship, not without faith, not without prayer, not without last week sacrifice, and today, the culmination of it all. Not without you. Not without you. And not without me. Today as a church, we look like a young David standing in a valley facing Goliath. And I don't just mean about the 83 compassion projects and partners that we are going after and doing ministry with, who we are equipping, indigenous leaders on the ground all over the world. We're fighting some global giants like poverty and illiteracy and slavery and injustice. Those are global giants and local giants that we will continue to fight against. But then even within our own midst as a church, we have a $4.5 million goal. That's literally the goal that it would take to get into a new location. That would at least secure the location. $7.5 million builds out the building. $12.5 million fully funds every bit of vision that we've cast at this point. But we're up against wild odds. You're up against wild odds in this. But I know the only prayer we have to hit any one of those goals is if we hit the primary one, which is we all go there together. That 100% of us participate in this somehow, that this doesn't happen without you. The temptation is to think that, well, look, there's enough people, there's a couple thousand people that call this place home now, others will take care of it. That's the temptation. We don't all have equal gifts. We don't all have equal opportunities, but we can have the equal heart of surrender and togetherness and an equal heart that we are family. In the words of one of my mentors, Stitch, he said, Ohana means family. And family means nobody gets left behind, or, thank you for the three of you that know Christ and the movie. Nobody gets left behind or forgotten. That today, we link arms. Even in times that we don't see eye to eye, we stand arm in arm and we charge up the hill together. I'm going to read a passage today and take 4 notes that are timeless truths from it. that the way we study the text is that we dive into the text and we ask, what was the text saying in its moment? Because it's never going to say what it never said. That it was written in a context, in a moment, that context matters as we approach the text. So we look at it in all of its depth, and then after we've done that from the contextual shoes of being in it, then we extract what are the things that are timeless truths within it. And that is my aim today in a story that maybe you have heard of. It was called The Feeding of the 5,000. It's in Mark chapter 6. It's up on the screen. You can turn there in your Bibles or scroll there on your phones, but it's up on the screen and in your notes. It says this in Mark chapter 6, verse 30. The apostles gathered around Jesus and reported to him all that they had done and taught. Then, because so many people were coming and going that they did not even have a chance to eat, he said to them, "Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest." Verse 32. So they went away by themselves in a boat to a solitary place, but many who saw them leaving recognized them and ran on foot from all the towns in the region and got there ahead of them. So when Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So he began teaching them many things. Imagine you're hungry, you have been teaching, and your disciples are with you. You get in a boat to cross Folsom Lake, and everybody you can see from Granite Bay, Rancho Cordova, Folsom, El Dorado Hills, everybody from the towns are literally running on the shoreline trying to catch your boat on Folsom Lake. That's literally what's happening in this moment, that everyone from these towns that's heard of Jesus is trying to get to him, and he has compassion on them, realizing they look like sheep without a shepherd, meaning that they're people without a flock, without a community, without someone to look to direction. And here's what he says. By this time, though, it was late in the day. So his disciples came to Jesus and said, "This is a remote place. We're out here in the middle of nowhere." And they said, "And it's already very late in the day. We got to send these people away so they can go into the surrounding countryside and villages to buy themselves something to eat." And Jesus looked at these boys and said, "You give them something to eat." Friends, everybody's running from all the towns and villages, and Jesus says, "Well, you do it. You feed them. You feed them." He answered, "You give them something to eat." And they said to him, that would take more than half a year's pay. That would take half a year's wages. Are we to go and spend that much on bread and give it to these people to eat? And then he asked them, "How many loaves do you have? Go and see." And when they found out, they said, 5 loaves and 2 fish. Now that's Mark's account. In the Gospel of John, we know that it says this: "Here is a boy, a young boy," as it says in Greek, "with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish." But how far will that go among us? He goes on to say in this chapter in Mark, "Then Jesus directed them to have all the people sit down in groups on green grass. So they sat in groups of hundreds and of 50s. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and he broke the loaves. Then he gave them to his disciples to distribute among the people. And he also divided the fish among all of them, and they all ate, and they were all satisfied. And the disciples picked up 12 baskets full of broken pieces of bread and fish, and the number of men who had eaten was 5,000. Scholars believe that if we're accounting for their women and children, which clearly there are young people there, even as John tells us in his text, that it's probably 20,000 people on that hillside. 10 Bayside Folsoms are on that hill, and everybody's hungry, and we have small loaves and small fish. And Jesus, in a miracle that I can't wait in heaven to ask him exactly how he did it, feeds everybody to the point that there is only overflow happening after. There's 4 extractable, timeless truths that I think from this passage sit with us today in the X moment we stand on. Number 1 is this: the need is always bigger than any one person can solve. The need in our community, the need in our city, the need in our church, and the need in our world is bigger than any one of you or any one of us. None of us can do it. The disciples look out at the crowd and realize something very quickly. The problem is too big for us. Thousands of hungry people, and we got no food, and we got no plan, and we got no budget. And their instinct is the same as most of us when we feel that something is too big in front of us. Well, maybe if we send the people away, then at least it's out of sight, out of mind, and it's on them now. Let's just send them out of the story. And they were right that the size of the problem was too big for them. And you're right to think the needs in our world and our city and the needs for our church and the opportunities facing us and the opposition facing us is too big for any one of us. It is. One person can't reach a city by themselves, and one person can't just carry the full mission of God, that we all need to go together, but there is calling on each individual one of us, as there was in this story. The point is exactly that the problem is too big for an individual. Number two, though, is this, that Jesus still invites his people into his own miracles. He invites them in. Look at what he says in verse 37. He says, you give them something to eat. Now, while that would have felt impossible, I also think that's the point. That the point should be, man, the need is so big, it ought to lead me to dependence. And at the same time that God is saying, you give them, you have a role in this. Jesus could have done it without these fools, and these disciples are fools. They're crazy, they're nuts. They're going to argue in a really pivotal moment in the gospel. They're going to be there and go, hey, Jesus, just to bring this up real quick, which one of us is going to be the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? Wrong question. Wrong question. They ask stupid stuff all the time. They're impulsive. They cut people's ears off. They jump off boats. They're literally nuts. He could have done it without them. We've got all the evidence in the Old Testament. He could make manna fall from heaven in an instant. He could have spoken and the miracle happened. But thank goodness for all of us, that's usually not how God works in the world. That's usually not how God works in the world. Because God's desire at the heart level for his kids is to work through and with his children as ambassadors of his kingdom. That he graciously invites us in, even at times in spite of us, in spite of who we are, in spite of our brokenness, and in spite of our giftedness. Like, in spite of all of it, he uses us in it. That's how God tends to work. He says, you give them something to eat. In other words, you do have a role in this. You are involved in this, and the miracle will include you. God chooses to work through his people, even when he doesn't have to. So number one, they saw that the need was too big for an individual. Number two is that he invites them into a miracle. Number three is that your calling is not to solve. Your calling is to bring what you have. If we get into the trap of now I need to be different and be good enough to solve something, we'll end up with savior complexes in every direction. Well, even sometimes you might be a person going through change in who you used to be. You're a little bit upset that you used to be this way. So you go far the other pendulum for a little bit on the other side, but you still develop the same savior's complex. It just has a different mask on. Our goal is not to solve things that only God can solve. Our goal is obedience. Our heart is we bring what we have. The disciples are called in that moment to do something very simple. Take inventory and see where the food is. There's a kid with a freaking Lunchable on the hillside. Equivocally, that's what he's got. Anybody remember the 90s Lunchables? Sure, they were full of cancer, but they were beautiful things, you know? They even came with a little snack in there and a little, you know, it was great. But that's equivocally what this kid's got. A packed lunch. Which, let's not like mysticize this story more than it already demands we do. Let's hold the reality. What he brings to Jesus isn't enough. He doesn't have enough. He can't solve this. It just proves that our little in the hands of Jesus is more than it was in our hands. And that's what we can't afford to miss. It's 5 loaves, and the Bible calls them small. And there's 2 fish, and the Bible calls them small. And there's 20,000 people. That's a tiny offering and a massive need. But the miracle starts when someone is willing to say, hey, this is what I've got. This is what I've got. And then place it into the hands of Jesus. And I couldn't help it. I took a red-eye flight back in for today, last night. And it's late in the night. Actually, honestly, it's early in the morning. And I'm praying about today and where our church is going, and I'm reading this passage, and I couldn't help but think, if this is a young man in the Greek, maybe even 12 years old, I wonder who packed him that lunch. If it was packed, maybe he did it, but I couldn't help but wonder, did a mom pack that dude that lunch? If so, she doesn't ever get mentioned in the Bible. Nobody ever records her, or if it was a dad, his name. Whoever provided for him the lunch didn't get their name in the text, but it was their faithfulness to take care of their kids, and then and then the kids, speaking of kids, and then the kid's heart being prodded in a moment where there was need, that they walked forward with no name on anything. And I sat there last night, and this isn't a part of the initiative. It's not a part of the Commitment Sunday. I just want to encourage you, some of you, all of you, be so intentional with how you are raising your children. I don't know if I feel that so intensely now that I have almost a 2-year-old next week, and my wife's 36 weeks pregnant. So I'm going to have a 2-year-old in 2 weeks, or next week, and then I'm going to have a newborn, God willing, in 4. Pray for a thug. I'm just a sanctified gangster trying to raise children. But I think what you need to remember, and I need to remember, honestly, is that your name may not be the one that's like remembered in the story. I look at Callum and I wonder, is there something Casey and I invest into him? And then actually some of the change in his pocket of the world that happens is because he shows up and says what we said last week, that everything that found its ways into my hands ultimately finds its way back at his feet. Raise your kids intentionally. So many of these kids, how many, let's be real, they can't get jobs because of child labor laws. I know a lot of y'all's money is in these cans, including this bag. And yet, you then provided an opportunity for a kid to be part of a moment. When we break ground someday and cut a ribbon, that they will remember that this happened. Your name probably won't be on that. Theirs will. When we go to Folsom Hope, theirs will. Your calling is not to solve issues, especially the ones that are bigger than you are. Your calling is to bring what you have in your hands. And the fourth thing we just extract from this is Jesus then does beyond what they could imagine. It's Jesus who makes it possible to write the words, they all ate and were satisfied. Jesus takes what they and we bring and multiplies it in ways that we can't even understand. We can't even understand. And not in this passage like it's barely enough, or not like it's just scraping by. No, in this passage, everybody eats and everybody's satisfied. And when it's all over, there's 12 baskets left full of stuff from these 2 little fish and these 5 loaves of bread, because when God's people bring what they have, put it in the hands of Jesus, Jesus does what we could have never done on our own. The ethic is this, friends. God never asks us to do everything. He simply asks us to bring what we have. So I'm telling you in a final kind of pastoral piece of this series, you have a role in this, to the point that we're not going there without you. And I wish I could tell you all the stories, but I can't. I can tell you the hard parts of being a pastor, and I can tell you the glorious ones. The glorious ones are we get to walk life on life together, and I get to see people's lives change. And I get to teach the Word of God in a way that feels very like humbling of, God, who am I to get to do this? Thank you for this opportunity. How in the world did we how do we get here? But the greatest honor of my life is I get to share in your stories. And the amount of stories I hear, you all don't get to hear all of them. And it's sad to me. But I also can't take every minute of every sermon and tell you the stories of what happened last week. And it would take every minute to tell you the stories. My grandparents called me this week and they said, Brannon, honey, did you have anybody come to Christ last week? And you got to remember, my grandparents were in a church where they see a couple people come to Christ a year. And for no glory of our own, we've not had a service somebody's not come to Christ. Not that I know of. The baptisms, the baby dedications, the lives restored, the marriages healed, the celebrate recovery couples. I get to hear stories that we don't always get to share, but let me run in quick order through a few that have been directly tied to this initiative. I had a family come up to me the other day in tears. The man and the woman, married couple, crying down their face. And I'm like, what's going on? And it was after a sacrifice message. And they said to me, we just want to trust. And I said, me? And they're like, well, believe it or not, we trust you. And I'm like, thank you. I understand it's invested trust. They're like, we want to trust God. And we want to have what you said in that message. We want to have a relationship with our heart in this. That it changes the way that we worship. And it changes the way that we trust. And I'm still wondering where the tears are coming from. And I said, what's the tears? And they said, well, you asked us to pray for the last month and a half, almost 2 months this weekend. And we had agreed on a number weeks ago. I said, that's amazing. That's all I'm asking. You don't even have to tell me the number. They said, yeah. But now we feel led and we're going to pledge 5 times what we agreed on. And I said, why? And he goes, I want to learn how to trust. I want to learn how to trust. I have a lady in this church I've told you about that's giving $25 a month to helping us get into a new place. And I know her circumstance. I know she's a single mom. I know she's got 3 jobs. And I know it takes trust to give that $25. And I love being able to tell her how grateful we are that she's involved here, but how much God honors the fact that she is trusting him this way. I have somebody in this church that's never tithed that walked up to me last week and pledged $100,000. He's never tied the dollar in his life. Our interns are broker than dirt. And I mean, when I'm talking about broker and dirt, I'm saying, you know how much we pay the interns? None. But we give them the ability to work other places so they don't starve, you know? So we're in that situation, and it's a wonderful thing. Our interns came together as a group, and they pledged $5,000. Our kids went first. Our middle schoolers put on a bake sale yesterday and sold everything that they could so that they can provide for our compassion causes as well. Some of their items are out in the lobby today. Friends, not without you. Not without me. You all walked in this morning and there was a card on your chair. I want to walk you through this thing one more time as I invite the band back up. Hopefully, I've said it's coming for 7 weeks. This shouldn't be an awkward surprise. That today is Commitment Sunday. Again, if you're new here, this is not something that we're asking you to be a part of. But for the rest of us that call this place home, today is one of the days where we say a group of committed people are securing the future. That this moment happens in the life of every great church. So what you see on that card is that first block, which is above and beyond what we tithe. What can we do over a 3-year period to go towards this initiative? There's going to be a box on there that says how you plan to give it for no other reason than how we plan with owners. We do need some of you to go first. What I mean by that is that some of you, if you know that number and you have prayed about it, I've never asked for your number, I'm not going to ask for it. Whatever you have prayed about and you have come to, if you've got it and you've got it up front, then we would ask you to be a first fruits offering for this reason. As we're talking to these building and landowners, we like being able to tell them, and we want to be able to tell them, hey, the down payment is secured, and this is what's pledged. Give us a chance. That's how we have to go into negotiations in this season. Some of us can give a little up front and the rest over the 3 years. Some of you are like me, and it's going to take all 3 years. But there's nothing really up front. It's going to come in incrementally over the 3 years, God willing. And then I'd ask you to be intentional with what you put on there. So if you pledge $1 billion, I'm making that to be hyperbolic because I know that's none of us in here. If you pledge $1 billion, and in 3 years from now, you really only had 10,000 to give, then we're cooked. Because then we go to owners and we got into something, and now we're dead in the water. So what I'm saying is what you've prayed about, what you've come to, it's not that there's not a faith number in there. It's just that we're intentional and we're committed, we're realistic and full of daring faith. There's also the ways we give on there. We went to a passage last week where David said, I gave the onyx, I gave the gold, I gave the silver, I gave the this. I told you before, we got people giving Pokemon cards. Who knew that Pokemon cards were a part of this, but they are now. And people have given cars. I mean, I can't even fathom this type of generosity that people have donated real estate. I don't care what the number is. I care that it has a relationship with your heart. And that card, I just want to make sure is clear. Because in this next song, I want you to fill it out with whoever you're with. If you're with your sibling, fill it out. If you're with a significant other and you've committed to this initiative, fill it out. If you're with your spouse, if you're with a family member, whoever you're with, fill it out during this song.